Hello, 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 hello. This is Wild Philosopher. He's Hound Pursues, and we're here once more to remind you that fairies are real. Today we'll be doing another wonderful stream of the VTubing clips. Just sort of reviewing our favorite clips. If you have any favorite clips, reviewing your favorite clips. And yeah.
And before we start off, I would like to start off by telling the audience about this new exciting opportunity we have for them. I would like to introduce Gnome Coin. We want to get you in on the ground floor. You gotta buy the Gnome Coin. It's gonna be big. Trust me, bros.
Trust us, bros. Yeah. Not a crypto scam.
Definitely not gonna have horrible things happen to it.
It's okay.
It is secured by fairy technology. Yes.
Yes. Our backing here is the gnomes that are real.
Yes.
They're backing the coins.
They hold all the tokens.
Indeed. But before we continue, so last time we did this, we reviewed a number of clips, watched a number of clips. Actually, let me screen share. Yeah, you can see my little clip thing. We did about down here. So we did 6 clips. We'll be doing another 6 or 7 today, maybe a couple more depending. I was able to get a better selection, although it's still slated heavily in favor of Phase Connect. Partially because I watch them more often, and partially because they have much looser corporate rules, and therefore talk about philosophical topics a lot more than HoloLive.
Yeah.
This is the only clip I've been able to find. Thank you, Cecilia Immergreen. With that being said, before we get started, I did mention to people that they can share any clips. You might have to post the name because I don't think YouTube lets you share clip links. So if you post the name, I can find it. We are down. I won't say we're down to talk about anything, because if it's something ridiculously controversial or just super lewd, just we might skip it.
Yeah.
We might still discuss it, but we'll see. With that being said, somebody asked me to talk about this clip, and at the time I said I couldn't because it's 18 minutes long, and so I said I'd watch through it, and we would figure out which sections we could talk about. I am very sorry, person who asked for that, but we're going to have to skip this. Because it's all Nero the AI saying contradictory non sequiturs. But poor Vidal has conflated or confused sentience and sapience, and isn't clear on how sapience leads to rights, which isn't his fault. That's just a lack of philosophical training, and I don't want to insult the guy for basically no reason. So
Also, rights do not exist. Olive McIntyre.
Yes. rights do not exist. Yes, right. Rights do not exist.
Nobody's gonna have rights.
Actually, it is interesting. So as I say, Vidal, it's a very common error, equivocates between sentience, which is the capacity to feel, and sapience, which is the ability to think. Humans are sentient and sapient, animals are not. At least that's the conventional view. Some might disagree, but let's just stick with the conventional for a moment. It is interesting, actually, because I know vegans
Aren't humans sentient and sapient? Animals are only sentient?
Yes.
Yeah.
And plants are also sentient, probably.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. It is like vegans often try and force the point that animals are sapient because they think that means that animals have rights, which doesn't quite follow, but we can sort of accept that. But it is interesting that you can actually go the other way and argue that sentience is and what is sentient is just as meriting of moral concern as what is sapient, which is what McIntyre does without invoking rights. But that raises the question. I mean, are AIs do AI have feelings, right? And we can go all over the place. I've actually written on this topic, although the essay isn't complete yet because I keep editing it. But I actually have a lot of issues with this topic because I think it gets the AI problem by the wrong end. The issue with AI or like artificial intelligence arguments isn't that AI think like you. The problem was always going to be that people would use AI as an excuse to treat people like robots. That to me was always the real concern around AI.
Wasn't that David Bentley Hart's take?
Was it? That I mean, yeah, that is the most salient. Like a lot of computational theories, which is the technical term in philosophy for theories that think that human minds are like robots, or they're trying to treat people like they're robots. And that's not just concerning in terms of like treating people as if they're replaceable machines, which is the more obvious concern. The other concern is you treat like you can replace the inputs and outputs of robots, right? It's very, very easy. Like look at how easily people have been able to take artificial intelligences, which are programmed for inclusivity, and reprogram them to be super duper racist. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. Like it takes somebody who knows what they're doing 10 minutes, couple hours. And then the concern is humans aren't like that, right? But you'll start treating people as if you can simply treat them however you want, and they will eventually like evolve to fit your standards as to how they should behave, rather than trying to figure out how you should be treating them based on the fact that, I mean, not that human character is immutable, but it's fairly firmly set. The list of things people have desired throughout history is static.
All right.
So yeah. For that reason, we won't be covering that clip. As I said, just for politeness reasons. I don't want to. I have nothing against the guy. It's not his fault. He hasn't read John Locke. But yeah, without further ado, I'm going to reopen this. Not that. Here we are. Okay, that is up. So we'll be starting with this one from Grimmy, who I shared a couple clips from last time, and this is on normal stuff for VTubers.
Cannibalism. What's what?
Okay, sound coming through all right?
All right.
Beautiful. Let me know if it needs to be adjusted.
No. Okay, here's the thing. I think VTubers just think about cannibalism because they How do I put this politely? VTubers got a lot of unemployed thoughts. VTubers have a dramatic amount of unemployed thoughts, even if they are employed. Unemployed thoughts are when you are not employed and you think way too much about things you shouldn't. And then you go crazy. And one of those things is, why don't we cannibalize other people? It's free meat. I'm sorry, is that so wrong? That is an unemployed thought. I love that term. I really do too. Cannibalism is okay if you're stuck in a survival situation. There you go. What about all the meat we waste, though? Cannibalism is like a normal VTuber thing at this point. I don't even like. I don't blink when people talk about that. No one does. They're just like, yeah, okay, yeah. She wants to eat people. Get some new material. Get some new material. We all do. Every one of us. Why not? Come on. Come on, please. Do you keep them alive to keep the meat fresh longer? No, I don't think we should. Okay, look. Okay.
And that's the end of the clip. Classic. For the record, we all don't, because humans aren't kosher. This is my excuse. Survival situations notwithstanding, humans aren't kosher. Yeah, vampirism is banned under biblical law. Sorry, folks. So at least either it's not true that we all do, or I'm not a VTuber. I don't know about you, Hound. What is it? They say everything he has made unclean, he has made clean.
Yeah, well,
that's the line.
I can't even stand spam. I don't think I'm gonna be really chill with human meat.
Like you're just not accepting that Pauline ethic.
Listen, Paul can say what he likes, but there are some things that I'm just gonna be like, like organ meats. I'm sure organ meats are very healthy for you, but they gross me out.
Next time we meet, I'm making kishka for you. That's breading wrapped in cow stomach.
Oh dear.
Tasty cow stomach. Yeah. Okay. So that aside, why did I play this clip?
I'm tracking on unemployment thoughts.
Hey, he wins the predictor, the wild bull. Yeah.
This is you did. This was not pre-planned. I was not told this, but no, you're going to make the comparison between unemployed thoughts and philosophy, and how philosophy can drive you nuts, right?
I was actually going to make the comparison between unemployed thoughts and partying, and then connect it to philosophy. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, tracking me well. Yeah, there's a famous adage in Catholic philosophy, which I certainly not unique to Catholicism, but we might as well. And this is: leisure is the basis of culture.
All right.
And what is more culture than cannibalism? I should don't clip that.
Okay.
No, leisure. It's this is a well-known. So I think the point Grimmy is making here is when you are not employed, and I think employment should not be understood as having a job as much as being like at work, right? When you're not in a state of work, which is absolutely true for certain disciplines, like VTubing, art, philosophy, writing. Even if you're making oodles of money off these disciplines and it's your technical job, you're still not working in the way you're working if your manager's threatening to fire you if you don't hurry it up.
Yeah. So you do. If you don't distract yourself, you do you do have time to think about stuff, and I think that's so. Like, academics and philosophers tend to see the world differently than like people who have like a 9-to-5, because they have time to ask questions that other people would be like, what do you mean, do I exist? What a stupid question. I need to eat later.
Yes. And I think it can go both. It can clearly go both ways, right?
Yeah.
There is absolutely sort of lines of thinking that aren't. It's not that they're useless. It's that they're, what would you call it? counterproductive, fantasia, but not in the good sense.
All right.
Like ways of thinking that's sort of aggressive, especially when you're trying to handle something with practical implications, like ethics or political philosophy or even logic, and you get away from how people might use it. A lot of criticism in philosophy back in the 60s around the extent to which logic had divorced itself from vernacular argumentation. How people in the real world reach a conclusion between two opposing premises. And this led to the rise of if anyone who watches this channel enough, you will hear me use the word Toulmin method. There's several other methods, but I am a very aggressive proponent of the writings of Stephen Toulmin and his own alternative to logical argumentation that was geared to be used by people with no philosophical training.
All right.
And then, yeah, like even Maimonides famously said that even trained philosophers should spend 3 hours a day laboring for that.
Yeah, you don't want to like lose touch with how actual people are living.
Yeah, how actual people are living, what it feels like to use your body. We can leave exercise ethics and the whole discussion and what it means to exercise to another time, but like you absolutely should be well aware of how your body functions.
Yeah, that's
back
Chad Plato hours here. You wrestle with the bros, and then you discuss crap.
Yeah, like knowing how your body moves, knowing what you can do with it, that's integral. Because it shows up all the time in ethics, right? We talk about ethics when it comes to how to treat sick people, how to treat. There's the famous biblical ad. It doesn't say love your enemy in the Torah, in the so-called Old Testament. It says, if you see your enemy's donkey fall by the wayside because of its burden, lift it up. That is, there's the same ethos of love thy enemy there. But also that's absolutely a physical statement about, it's not like you should have good feelings towards your enemy. It's that you have to be able to lift his donkey.
You've got to immanentize that to like help the dude get his donkey out of the ditch, and not like thoughts and prayers, my bro.
Thoughts and prayers. So yeah, on the flip side,
that was the whole thing of the book of James, I think.
You'd know your New Testament. I always confuse James with Jude.
No, it's not Jude. I think it's James. James, who was like, yeah, bro. You don't just say, like, I'm praying for you. You fucking give the dude clothes if he has none.
Yes. Yeah. Which in Judaism it's the sentence, there is no faith without effort, or there is no bitachon without hishtadlus. Or not apathy, yeah. But yeah, back on like sort of target here. On the flip side, however, if you don't engage in that activity of leisure, you get sucked into what you're doing, right? Which in a lot of modern, just normally that can often involve commitment to all sorts of weird delusions or immoral things, or just losing track of who you are as a person and where you want to go, what you want to do, what's valuable to you in life, right? Like we can sit here and talk about some of the more out there philosophical questions, like am I a brain in a vat? But there's also things like, your childhood dreams. Right. We've all, everyone who does any reading has read about that one character who like suddenly smells the lilacs on the wind and is reminded that as a kid he'd always wanted to like own a candy shop. And so at the age of 50, he quits his career at McDonald's, where he's been working a miserable life for 30 years to open a candy store. Like, that's not it's a trope in literature, but it's a trope that's very much based on reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sort of sudden interruption of some sight or smell into our consciousness, which gets us like thought, where we daydream. And then, he goes on, like, he opens a candy store, and, he improves the lives of thousands of kids. And that is an example from fiction, but that happens all the time with real people. You have no idea how many of my classmates were brilliant artists, or musicians, or writers, or all three. But there's no money in any of those, so they went off to become scientists because STEM degrees make more money. Right. Yeah. And that's fine. No, absolutely no, make those sorts of, but I always told you, it's do that, but don't lose track of your producing art, right? Like, that makes you happy, that creates something, and you want to become a psychologist because it pays well. Which is no shame, but don't lose track of your dreams. And so it is unemployed thoughts. And then we can talk about cannibalism, which is this, for the people who've joined since we've shifted gears 3 times, that's the subject of this. This is normal, like, thoughts about cannibalism are normal for VTubers. That's the claim we're discussing, because they're unemployed thoughts. But then there's all sorts of other weird places your mind might go that could be very fruitful. Even if you don't do anything practical with them, like why is there no government ministry of flowers dedicated to bringing flower beds to all the people?
That is a very wild philosopher thought.
Yes, that is absolutely a wild philosopher thought, because they 100% should be. I believe that the mayors of this world, of the divine right of kings, or divine right of mayors, excuse me, should bring flower beds to the people. But no, like, maybe obviously you're not going to do anything politically useful with that, or socially useful with that thought. But maybe that's then going to motivate some sort of practical action. Maybe not even at the city level, just in your neighborhood, right? To beautify. I could give multiple other examples here of unemployed thoughts that have a practical function. Cannibalism is maybe one of the weird ones. But even then, if you sit there and you think about it and you go on, because you can take that in 2 directions, right? There's what is it about food that is distinct from cannibalism, or eating food, and then there's what is it about being human that makes us distinct from sources of food, which is the flip side of the question. And one might lead you to treat your fellow human beings differently, or think about how you behave with them. Whereas the other one might change your relationship with your food meals entirely.
I think there's a third avenue here, which is kind of the mention of wasting meat, which kind of veers off to talking about, like, hunger and, like, people who are hungry, and how our ethics surrounding food and kind of the disposal of food and the society around that.
Yes.
Like, people throw away perfectly good food because the corporation doesn't want people to get it without money.
Yeah, they'll throw perfectly good food. The other one is people will, like, probably, where is it where Byung-Chul Han talks about people who, meals are no longer social occasions. People, instead of spending time to, like, talk with their family and enjoy it, people scarf down the food, looking at their phones, which is a bit of a boomer take, but it's not false, right?
Yeah.
The meal is, like, people absolutely do scarf food down, and Han points out That this doesn't just involve a different orientation to meals, it involves a different orientation to food.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
Hmm?
I know, like I know you're better with this, but yeah, I absolutely just grab my food and run to my cave of solitude.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, I had to teach myself though. I had to teach myself.
All right.
But yeah, you've seen he knows that I am an absolutely lethargic eater. Um, Mostly because I spend the whole time yapping with people.
Yes.
Professional wild yapper.
You've watched the food just disappear from my plate.
That I have, yeah. But then we talk, like I've mentioned before on stream, and I'll mention it again, that like if you get into philosophy, people are always having arguments about objects versus subjects, and now we have to like stop. Like some people be like, oh, well, we have to have no objects. We have to treat everything like a subject because then we'll stop treating the Earth badly, and this will solve climate change. Among or whatever. And then other people be like, no, the problem is we think some things are worthy of being treated as subjects in the first place. We need to abolish the idea of humans and treat everything like crappy objects. Then we'll treat the planet well, which is Graham Harman. And I have been exceptionally skeptical of most of these approaches because I think the issue has nothing to do with your views on the nature of the object per se, and everything to do with your attitudes toward it. And the question is, like, is there an ethic of care?
Yeah. Go back and watch our live stream on Kill la Kill for more.
Yes. So in context, so you were talking about wasted meat, right? And you were pointing out food waste, which is true. That is absolutely true that we waste way too much food as a society in the West.
Yeah.
And it's really gross, especially for those of us who have left the West and have seen out others. But moving on, sorry. But you can also go about it the other way and ask, like, why is and here's another unemployed thought, like, why is the discussion of food centering around waste in the first place? Like, what's our attitude toward, not that I think waste isn't its own worthy topic, but why is our discussion, when we're gravitating towards cannibalism, why is our primary criterion, like, waste?
I think when we're thinking of cannibalism, I feel like saner minds go in the direction of scarcity, right? Like we're thinking of the survival on the desert island situation, right? It's like there's a scarcity of food, therefore we resort to eating humans.
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch the clip. I can't remember if she said the line about free meat before she talked about scarcity.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I go back real quickly to
Sure.
about 30?
Cannibalize other people, it's free meat. I'm sorry, is that so wrong? That's what I thought. I love that term. I really do too. Cannibalism is okay if you're stuck in a survival situation. There you go.
Okay, that's someone else's.
What about all the meat we waste, though?
Yeah, it's somebody else's. Because she did say it's free meat. My impression, I mean, yes, she's talking about survival situations, which is absolutely the norm, or it should be the norm for when people talk about cannibalism. I've seen an awful lot of weird stuff about the US trying to impute cannibalism to specific peoples. But that aside,
I said good times, good times.
Good times, yeah, it's like they're not eating because they're people, because they're starving to death. They're eating people because they want to. That's just their culture, bro. It's like, oh yeah, that's a sound. And this is why you have unemployed thoughts, right? It's your unemployed self that goes, well, that doesn't make sense. And starts wandering over the terrain, thinking about it. I got the impression, like, free meat.
Yeah.
I got the impression she was talking about this as a normal discussion generically.
Yeah, she comes across with like the very blasé. It's like, why not?
Yes, which is base. But yeah, I do think it is worthy of, like, what if we talk about cannibalism normally, because normally our discussions about our food should proceed around the assumption that we have it.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do if we? Because obviously, if we don't have it, the primary ethical consideration is getting it.
Yeah.
And then the secondary ethical consideration is getting it without stealing or murdering.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about what to do with the food once we have it. And that would be in the context in which cannibalism would be the most salient topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we go back and forth. I do think we were able to certify this a 100% genuine, true claim that unemployed thoughts are normal.
Yes.
for VTubers about yes, I don't know about cannibalism. I'm going to be honest. Before I watched this clip, it had been years and years since I last thought about cannibalism. Excepting some news articles where I groaned and head desked. But that aside. That aside. All right. Anything else you want to say about this clip?
Again, I've heard human meat tastes like spam, and I really hate the smell of spam. And this is why I oppose cannibalism and whatever corporation manufactures spam.
Hound versus the Pauline epistles, everyone. Behold this bread.
It's like, nah, fam, looks kind of gross. I'm not that hungry, Lord.
Okay, alrighty.
If you would sit down from heaven, like shrimp kebabs, I would have been all in. But no, you just sit like fried spam, and it smells kind of rank.
Yeah. Have you ever tried? I haven't had spam in over a decade for obvious reasons. It's made with pork. Have you ever tried spam with you dice it up or chop it up and fry it with potatoes and onion?
You can't see the full expression through this VTuber avatar. Be aware that it's just disgust. Why would you ruin perfectly good potatoes with spam? Even the smell alone would drive me away.
Okay.
Okay. No.
So you make your hash browns with smoked meat?
I mean, I can do bacon or sausage, but spam is of it's horrible.
Tragically, I can't do anything with this information because it's not like I can serve you spam. All right. Defeated again. All right, I'm going to skip. We're going to come back to a couple of these clips. I'm going to skip ahead to this one, though. This one is fresh. The Grimmy clip, that's pretty fresh. April 10th this year. But this one is yesterday.
All right.
And so before I play this clip, the next clip's very much going to be a how well does Hound know Wild Philosopher?
All right.
Yeah, let's see if you can latch on to why I picked this clip.
Thank you all for the tier ones. Although I say today, if you want to take the tier ones you would have given me and give them to a certain ghost girl named Mogu, I just really like her. While we're thinking about loving people, I know I said it at the beginning of this stream, but there's a certain ghost deserves like literally all the love on earth. She has been so real to me forever always
love,
so
slow
welcoming and
love,
kind
slow
and
love.
wonderful and inspiring. We both had the same, like, so Mogu and I went on a heist or something to steal. We were going on a weapons heist, as she was being a bandit for a second too, and she just did way more. We had like the same opportunity, she just did way more with it, and that always inspired me, like that she was able to make like a mountain out of a molehill. I was always just deeply impressed with her, and she was always just so nice to me. And she was always really, really busy. No matter what, she was making time, you know? No matter what happened, she always prioritized everyone else. So I just like, oh my God, you just have to support her. I couldn't speak higher of somebody. She's actually just such a good person. You have to like her as much as I do.
Oh, shoot. I did not mean to click on that. All right. Well, okay. While that reloads, I have sorry because I hit 5 things by accident.
Thank you all for the cheer.
Yeah. I don't know where your mind's going, but my mind is going to kind of places of reciprocity here.
Okay. It's more based than me.
Right.
I picked this for this entire clip for this is Sunny Splosion talking about Mogu Ghost, in case anybody would like to track down and follow either. They are both back on the scene following their heist as bandits, which is certainly one word for what what they were doing. But yeah, I picked this. We can talk about the reciprocity. Actually, I picked this because the she has an amazing ability to make mountains out of molehills line.
Dang.
Which
That's past me. That's such past me. That's so past me.
Yeah, that one. Let me. I'll play it again so you can catch the context.
Yeah, I get the context. He was like talking about how she took a little and then made a lot out of it. Like,
yes.
Like very much like a. Yeah.
Well, that's that's the exact opposite of the actual meaning of the phrase, right?
Yeah,
or at least,
like,
yeah.
It's not talking about something good you were given that you made more good of. It's about like having a minor issue and then like amping it up to 11.
Yes, that's the normal meaning. She flipped it backwards, right? She took interest sort of flipped, like it's like she took a bad opportunity, and then she used it to, but it was the same. Used it to basically make a mountain.
Yeah,
it's solid and broad out of it. It were my very Chestertonian, which is why I figured you might figure out that was the line. Yeah, that would be the name of it. So I reference to my personal all-time favorite philosopher and writer and poet, G.K. Chesterton, for anyone listening. Yeah, very, very Chestertonian ethos of sort of invert. It's like she made mountains out of molehills. Compliment. But yeah, there is the sort of ethic of reciprocity. So as I said, they were both. Okay, when they say heist, they mean they were both working at a certain famous VTubing company that is currently in the middle of collapsing violently.
it's been collapsing violently for a little bit now. But
yeah, it's been Well, I know the line "too big to fail" is a meme. There are things that will absolutely fail. They'll just fail slowly and impressively and catastrophically as the whole thing sinks down into fire and ash. So yeah, it's been failing for about a year. Very, very impressively so. So if people are like, why are they talking about reciprocity for bandits? They weren't thieving, at least not as it would be. If anything, they were being stolen from. But that's my personal commentary, which I'll keep to myself.
Yes, yes.
But yeah.
So yeah, she talks about like how good this person was to her, like in trying times, right? And so she's like saying, instead of give to me, give to them. Very much
Yes.
an ethic I think we should encourage societally.
Yep. Yeah. Ethic of the as I say, reciprocity is based on. It's not based on exchanges. It's based on gifts.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very, very important. You know, somebody ethic.
There's a lot of stuff written on the economy of the gift.
Yeah. Mutual hospitality, basically.
Yeah. And you can like think of this in a way like somebody takes you out to lunch. There's that unspoken idea there that maybe you should take them out to lunch sometime. And that in turn deepens your relationship kind of thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting because if you view it as a norm or an obligation, it fails.
Yeah.
That's always the fascinating thing about reciprocity, like reciprocity, gift giving, gratitude. It's a norm without an obligation. Because if obligations exist, it just cannot function.
Yes.
Like, so yeah, that was based, especially the context that's sort of missing is Sunny Explosion is a much larger channel than Magu Ghost, which maybe helps recontextualize things a little more to on that at reciprocity line. And then yeah, I thought it was such a poet. I mean, I know it was technically a misfire, maybe, but it was such a poetic line. She made mountains out of molehills. In terms of like she got in. The person in question, like she gets in as the whole thing collapses, basically. Through the fire and the flames she carried on, as a famous metal band would have it. And yeah, she did. I don't know if she didn't make it because she's no longer stealing. But she did make it. Yeah, she was able to make a mountain out of a terrible situation. And that's, just beautiful line in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% stealing that from my writing. With credits to Sunny. All right. Anything else we want to say about this clip?
Not really. Nope.
Yeah, certified true.
Yes.
Certified true. All right. Do you want to do the undefeatable debate strategy, or do you want to do don't say this to Doki?
Let's do don't say this.
Okay. Speaking of
Fun.
speaking of heists and certain collapsing organizations.
If you're innocent, spell innocent backwards.
Oh.
It's time assist. It's so dumb. Okay, I'm innocent.
Sorry. Actually, really quickly, this is one of those Among Us games. I don't know the name for them, but just for context.
Yeah, it's like the 3D version of Among Us.
Yeah, I think this one might actually be older. I don't know what it's called. So
I doubt it's older. I think Among Us really got this aesthetic down.
I think I heard Gary's mod is older.
That's
because there was
not anything like Among Us, I don't think.
It has a version though. Because right before Amelia retired, they were doing. I want to say it was Gary's mod, and they were playing Among Us. And we're not going to watch any clips from that. They were hilarious, but especially the bit where Fuamoko won by hiding in a closet and getting lost. But that aside. So, but yeah, I don't know. Just context. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I can spell innocent backwards. T-O.
It means you're gonna die.
Oh, I have a gun.
Click on it, it'll have tutorials on how to do it. Oh no!
How do I do this? Oh, another gun. That's why do they keep giving me guns?
Don't trust anyone.
Don't trust any. What about you? Even
Don't
you?
trust anyone.
Really? Even
Not
you?
even me.
Okay.
Not
What? She said don't trust anybody. Just listen to what I was just doing what she told me to do. Where is everybody's died? Hello? Even what?
Oh my god, welcome.
What's that guy?
Wait, she was the bad guy all along.
Not you going, where's everyone? After you killed someone.
Jennifer literally was like, don't trust anybody, not even me. It sounds like, okay. And that's what you said. And then
You're fucking crazy.
I literally just did what you told me to
How
do.
did you kill me?
I had a shotgun.
Or anything.
I
Where's my
don't know. I found a shotgun on the floor.
Don't trust anyone.
Really?
Not even me. Not even.
I love tea,
Oh,
but
sorry. Alrighty. So that was that clip.
If you're innocent, spell innocent backwards.
This. So. Happy birthday to Bentley. Sorry, in the comments. I don't know if he's still here. He came in and said today is my birthday. So yeah, happy birthday to him. So back onto Doki Bird. Any initial hound? If you're talking, I can't hear you because you're muted.
Oh no,
But
no.
yeah. All right. Initial sentiments.
Yeah, I don't tell people not to trust anybody. That is not a recipe for a stable society.
Yes, I think this. We talk a lot about trust on this channel, ethically, metaphysically, and I think this clip in microcosm, because they say I don't know who it was who called Doki crazy, but that was a highly rational series of actions on Doki Bird's part. After the bit where she failed to spell innocent backwards.
Yes.
Highly rational. Yeah, don't trust anybody, even me. Yeah, you can't see me. I'm making a finger gun gesture. Bang. Got the rigging. I love that facial expression near the very end there. But yeah, we always talk about the sort of high trust society. Or not even high trust, so just a trust between two people, right? And we mention, the fundamental basis of trust is understanding that when you trust someone, you might get burned. They might turn out, I cannot seem to capture it, tragic.
I love tea, but girl, coffee break is.
That's a shame. What was I about to
If
say?
you're innocent,
Yeah, we always talk about how trust is sort of it's the awareness that you risk being injured and the willingness to make yourself vulnerable in that way.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, I sort of think, just perfectly embodied by the video game. Basically. It's like, no, don't trust anybody because, you know there's somebody in the bunch that'll hurt you. which is true about life, right?
Yeah.
And yet, if you don't, you're like, what's your choice? There's 12 people. Let's say you have 12 people, and you know one of them will hurt you, given the opportunity. Do you not trust the other 10? Remembering that you count as somebody. Or do you make that risk?
Yeah.
And you never win these types of games if you don't make that risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, this is very, very. It was a real Han moment. I worked hard to find a good clip from Doki Bird. This was the best.
All right.
That whole. Maybe we might. I'm still trawling her parenting stream with Gumiho. See if I can dig something out of that.
Yeah.
But what was I about to say? Oh yeah, I mean, very, very straightforward theme. And then on the flip side, it's like you tell people, to be wary, you get burned. Or in this case, blasted in the head with a shotgun. Pew pew. All right, I don't know if we have any more to say about that. That was just very blunt. It hit you. It hit like a bullet to the face.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anything else? Or?
No. If someone tells you not to trust them, shoot them in the face.
Yes, precise.
That
Well, that is actually an additional lesson. One of the sometimes we talk. Have we ever talked on this channel about the difference between rationality and normative rationality?
I don't know.
So people always confuse rational thinking, which for the purposes of our conversation needs just be connected to like actually having deep thoughts about whatever you're discussing, whatever your position may happen to be, just actually thinking about it before you reach that position, with like we might think of as normative or societal rationality. I don't really like the word societal because I think that maybe puts the weight, but this is just going to be either ways of thinking or conclusions that are held to be rational by whatever group you're in, and so are rational or viewed as rational on that basis. Right.
Yeah.
To give, like, in our society, this is in modern Western civilization, this is going to be science, and maybe the experts more broadly. In ancient Rome, this was professionally trained haruspices, which is people who read animal entrails. Not to say the two are equivalent, but your decision to engage in those source or ways of thinking is not on its own rational. Right.
All right.
Unless you actually have sincere thoughts about the subject, which is why even for things that are probably true, like chemistry, that it's valuable to think about them. You will notice one of the things you will notice as philosophers is people will often take an idea and then they'll run with it, and then the idea will start leading it'll lead invariably to conclusions they hate. So they'll just deny that it'll lead to those conclusions because that's not rational, right? Yeah. But it actually is. And so there's all sorts of people who look ridiculous from the outside, but that's just because they're taking their ideas seriously and they're running to that obvious conclusion, right? Like, don't trust anybody, bang.
Yes. Eliminate the people you can't trust, which is everyone.
Yeah. There's all sorts of ideas like this in real life, like relativism, right? It's the big joke is if somebody tells you they're a relativist and don't believe it's wrong to commit actions, you punch them in the face repeatedly and steal their wallet. And relativists get really salty because they're like, why would you do that? That wouldn't be rational. It's like, Wouldn't it be? It's perfectly logical. Or G actually use a Chesterton example. Chesterton's famous example, and this was in his. I've heard possibly apocryphal stories that he did this IRL. I doubt they're real, but he certainly recommended it in his novel Man Alive. If somebody tells you they're a philosophical pessimist, they tell you they think that life is intrinsically suffering and it's just not worth living, chase them firing a pistol. And you will invariably find that actually, yeah, they do think life is worth living. This remark obviously directed more to people who hold these things as intellectual attitudes than to people with depression. But just think for
do not chase your depressed friends with pistols.
Yes. But when Chesterton was alive, one of the major philosophical movements was pessimism, which holds, like, philosophically, it holds that life is not worth living. And Schopenhauer glorified unaliving yourself for hundreds of pages. Right? He was really, really big into that, and Chesterton just thought this was ridiculous, both for philosophical reasons and because, like, logically speaking, if that's your view.
Would the world be better if Schopenhauer Minecrafted himself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of Schopenhauer was a better person than his philosophy was. And he was an awful person. But he was a better person than he was a like, he legendarily tossed an elderly woman down the stairs for annoying him and then got mad when he had to pay injury fees for the rest of her life. Yes, he was just a Arthur Schopenhauer was just an awful person, but he was a much better person than his philosophy would suggest. And so yeah, Chesterton's favorite example is the correct response if somebody starts defending this claim is draw your pistol. But yeah, it was Goethe's big predilection too. On a side note, he writes. This isn't. I mean, we're kind of getting off target here, but it's kind of a funny story. So Goethe, before he writes Faust, which is what he's best known for nowadays, he writes the Sorrows of Young Werther, and the Sorrows of Young Werther is intended to aggressively pillory and mock a overly sensitive, aesthetic young man who is really like living a good life, but because of his philosophy, he comes to trick himself into thinking that life sucks, and so in a statement of aesthetic revolt, he leaps off a bridge. And Goethe, he publishes this slightly offensive satirical novel, and people just they take it dead seriously, and it led to this mass epidemic of people, young men, unaliving themselves, and Goethe had to go and write 2 books presenting the opposite perspective. This is why Faust exists. He wrote 600 pages of Faust to argue that life is worth living. Well worth reading if you are. I mean, obviously, I said, like, philosophical pessimism is not the same as depression, in the same way that schizoanalysis is not the same as schizophrenia. One is just a philosophical imposture, and the other is a medical condition. But I do recommend, as somebody who does have depressive fits, I'd recommend Faust. It's a lovely book for that reason. But, sorry, back on target. And obviously this is not to say that people should unalive themselves, but there is a point to be made about following the logic of your ideas and not allowing you to be swayed by what a group, like either society or the media or a group, thinks you should or shouldn't be doing because it's rational.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things society says that aren't rational. But that aside, anything else we wanted to talk about here?
I think we're good.
Should have had some better examples there, because I think those were maybe too heady for this particular clip. But yeah, like there are plenty of other examples with like some of the stuff people mock vegans for. Right. Like they are taking their ideas dead seriously.
Yeah.
And on its own, that you might think the ideas are absurd, and you might be correct, but I do admire that logical commitment. In a way, I don't for people who go half. Like they'll say that society is intrinsically constructed a certain way, and then they'll see a conclusion they don't like, and they'll be like, obviously not that way, though. And it's like, then why would you try to convince me the other way? Anywho, sorry. I'll play our next clip here.
I love tea, but girl, coffee brightens my life. Team coffee. Well, you're wrong. Team tea. Honestly, if you ever want to win a debate, just look the opponent in the eye, get very close, like uncomfortably close, and then look them in the eye, and then go, bottom line, you're wrong. And then you just walk away. And you win! It's that easy! Wow, so easy! Super easy! Wow, I won! I won the debate! Nah-uh! Nah-uh! Okay. Go tea!
English hard dial. English.
So, I don't know why it keeps.
I love tea, but girl, coffee.
It's just too slow at pausing.
No, sorry about that.
You've got it.
It's because my computer is struggling to have both the stream and me going simultaneously.
Yeah.
With the whole VTuber rig. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I love that clip. That is. I was remarking to Hound before the stream, trying to find clips for this series is a real exercise in what do corporations tell their staff to do.
Mm-hmm.
It is a pain in the patootie to find stuff from Hololive members. Which is why, as I said, mostly face clips. But this isn't a critical remark. You're just getting a different experience, right?
Yeah.
An audience. But yeah, there's that clip. So what do you think? Certified true?
What do we mean by debate? Like, what is the purpose of a debate? That's the question, right? Because
So I'll let you finish your thought. Yeah.
like I think there's three schools of thought here. One is that a debate is a means of trying to convince someone of your viewpoint, when I think that rarely works. Like,
I've never seen it.
People are not very great at being argued into new positions. Like, the combative strategy is not highly workable. The second school of thought is that like a formal debate is something for an audience, right? You're trying to get the audience to agree with you. But often that's like a matter of like rhetoric and showmanship as much as it is like reason and logic. I think in this case, she's like cutting out that middleman and saying, like, this ultimately it's just about you feeling like you've won, and she's paired that out to just getting close to someone and telling them they're wrong.
Yeah. And then of course the third is, if I'm tracking you correctly, the third would be where you have no direct aim at all. Your aim is to engage in a sincere discussion with the other to reach the truth, whatever it might be. Right.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
Is that even a debate though? That's more of a discussion.
Well, it would still be a debate. Like, you can't have a formal debate in that manner. We are not in the habit of doing it, but that would be the Jewish or Confucian method.
Yeah.
Like, when you see references to debate in Jewish or Confucian texts, they don't mean debates like we do it. They meet that like it is. They are meeting in a formal room for an exchange of ideas, but the goal is not either to convince the opponent or to win. The goal is to reach the truth, even if that means giving up your own point of view.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it is potentially a type of debate. I will agree with you. I've been active in philosophy for over nearly a decade, if not longer. There has been one instance in my life where I have won or won a debate, and that was where somebody said Michael is the archangel Reshef, or the archangel Michael is the Canaanite god Reshef. And I said, no, he isn't, and brought up 3 different sources from secular scholars proving that Reshef is a separate individual in the Bible.
Yeah.
Because Reshef gets referred to independently in Habakkuk 3:5.
Yeah. Reshef and
Ketub.
some other dude.
Yeah, Reshef and God in Habakkuk 3:5. It says that the plague gods Reshef and Ketub are striding by God's chariot.
Yeah.
And the guy said, "Oh, so what do you know? You're correct." 10 years, that's the only debate I've ever convinced someone. I've won a lot of debates. I think I've won more debates than I've lost. I have almost rarely convinced people. And in fact, often I've come to accept what they've said later. I was a very firm believer in moral law codes when I did when I took classes based on that. Not that I don't think the law should be ethical, but I have since swung around to Hardian positivism. This being HLA Hart, not David Bentley Hart. Sorry. Which was the other school that my opponents, who were mostly Chinese exchange students, held, because that's the official school of China.
All right.
The big one, not the small one. And yeah, years later, I'm like, they were actually right. I won the argument. They won the war.
Damn.
I was wrong though.
Which just says something about debates. Like you can win an argument and not be right.
I actually think people who win arguments are just usually wrong. Because in the methods of searching the truth and the methods of being a skilled rhetorician are 2 totally distinct schools of thought.
Yeah.
And people, not that you can't invest time in both, you will almost always find that it's one or the other, just in terms of time investment.
Yep.
Like, candidly, I am a terrible rhetorician. Right? I invest my time in philosophizing, in writing, in exercising, and then in going around living my life and doing all the normal stuff I have to do. Spending hundreds of hours mastering debating techniques is not on that list. But yeah, I have never seen people converted by rational argumentation. I actually, as a theist, I don't even think you can. Right? I think a knowledge of the good is a sort of primordial encounter. And I think you can maybe make people receptive to that encounter. I don't think you can convince them of it. This is why I occasionally do videos critiquing apologetics, but never do videos providing apologetics, even though I'm very religious. With that being said, I do think she's correct. If your goal is to win the argument, which was what she said, right? She didn't say if your goal is to be right. She simply said if your goal is to win the argument, then yeah, overly aggressive, like going up to the other, as weird as she's laughing because it's obviously such a ridiculous method, but simply telling people you're wrong in a hugely assertive tone of voice will lead to you winning the argument like 60 or 70% of the time. Especially if the other person is sincere. Right. You see this all the time in YouTube. Like if you watch YouTube, like philosophy or political philosophy debating streams, where somebody's sitting there and he's prepared to argue, and he's inviting people to like talk to him, and they're trying to give him their sincere views, and his goal is just to crush him.
Yeah, their goal is to find some hole to exploit.
Yes.
And like get them to make a mistake.
Yes. And sometimes they're correct, of course. Like, not to totally disparage channels that do that. But often it absolutely will just be, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Or, you're just wrong. Or, this is why we should bring back the asylums. Or, what are some of the other examples? Or they'll just, my personal favorite is when they'll air the clip of them losing because the other person will actually be a better arguer, and then they'll put it like so and so gets totally destroyed by 25 whatevers. Or I destroy, like the flip side, I destroy blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This guy here. And then you watch I have watched multiple clips under that label. It's like, I can't wait to see what argument he gives. And he says something, the other person points out why that's a load of crap, if you part, and then he's like, no, you're wrong. And then the clip ends, and I'm like, what? What? What does this have to do with anything?
You're stupid!
He won the other guy won the argument. But if you can convince people you won the argument, that's all that. You don't even need to win. You just have to convince people you won.
Yeah.
Right. So she actually is 100% correct here. That like if your goal is to win the debate, this is 100% a salient argument practice that will lead to victory 99% of the time. Or maybe not like this exact phrasing, but variations on it. Which explains an awful lot of modern politics, frankly, where the goal is to win and not to be correct. Or offer salient public policy suggestions. But sorry, that aside, back on target. And then you have the other two. I actually do, as much as I think arguing to convince the other person is a waste of time, it at least is nominally more honest than not. Obviously, she's joking, so I'm not going to say this, but at least is nominally more honest than the method suggested here. But if you want to get anywhere in life, it's only that third variety of debating that'll actually be successful. Right. Alrighty. Anything else about this clip?
No. I think very short clip. We got.
Well, yeah. This is a YouTube short, so
yeah.
These last few are YouTube shorts. I think we'll do 2 more and then we'll call it for the night. So we will do Aruka. This was her infamous I think this was the infamous I'm not lesmaxing stream.
All right.
And then we'll do Shrek. Because I bet you guys didn't know we can have profound Shrek philosophy discussions. But
I am the source. I am the source of Uruka not being lesbian, because who else am I gonna source? Who else am I gonna cite to prove that Uruka's not a lesbian? I can't cite other people. I've never slept with anyone before. Do I have to go pick a man on the street to convince you that...
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm not taking volunteers right now. Stop volunteering, you weirdos.
Okay. Alrighty. So, I'm not too interested in rather obviously, I don't think we're interested in the question of what is Uruka's sexual orientation.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in the first part of that claim. What else I am the source. Can you cite yourself as a source for yourself? What do you think?
That is actually a tough one.
Yeah, I'm
Because-
actually not sure.
Like, obviously, you should be the best source about yourself, right? But at the same time, I think, like, I've been wrong about myself before, many times, right?
I think most of us are.
Yeah. So you could, but it's a very, very flawed source.
Mhm. And Lewis points out in the screw tape letters, obviously backwards, so I'm translating the claim here, that part of the command to know thyself is to spend time with other people because they probably know you better than you do.
All right.
Yeah. Like, I can think of a few examples here of people who absolutely knew me better than I knew myself on certain issues. Right. I was the last person to realize that I was probably autistic. In retrospect, that was a weird realization. Or weird lack of... But then on the flip side, I can also think of instances where I absolutely know myself better than other people.
Yeah.
Like, I often struggle to convince people that I do not like crowds and that this is not... it's not just that exposure will help, and they keep being like, you should spend time in Universal Studios. It's like, no.
Yeah. So I think it is kind of a both hand thing.
Yeah.
Yes, you are a source, and people should take your assertions about yourself seriously. At the same time, speaking of autistic people, like, I know of at least one person who is definitely autistic, and from what I've heard about his friends, refuses to admit that. I think you know who I'm talking about. Philosopher.
I'll have to confirm with you because I can think of two people. I can think of two mutual acquaintances we have.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely...
But yeah. So, and it's like, it's obvious to everyone but themselves. But yeah. So, like, yeah. Are you the final source about yourself? I don't think so. But you are a source. And you do have an insight into your own subjective experiences that other people are not privy to.
Yeah. On the flip side, there have been a lot of cases I've seen where people did not know they were being... To pick the example from the clip, where people were attracted to someone visibly, so like they were flirting, they were doing everything, and they were not aware of it.
Yeah. No, that is definitely a thing.
Yes.
And
I've apparently been guilty of this. Twice.
All right.
So.
Yeah. And yeah, that can get messy when you're dealing with, like, sexuality, because there's kind of
a 10-foot pole.
there's the what's that about the 10-foot pole?
Oh, the question is Aruka lesmaxing.
So yeah, because there's always, I think, this internal assumption that everybody thinks the way that you do, for a lot of people at least. And then there's, like, the moment of shock when you realize that you are the weird one. I know this is really big for asexuals.
Well, I mean,
Wait.
we can totally decontextualize this from the romantic though.
Yeah.
Because this is always my issue. It's like this is a character trait that everyone has, right? This whole being self-blind, or being blind to self-blind and blind to the degree we differ from others. But one of the things that drives me up the wall about arguing or talking or arguing, or even reading American philosophers, is the degree to which this has been uncritically assumed by American thinkers, that everyone else, whatever their religion, culture, or nationality, is fundamentally in agreement with the American perspective on like the way value schemas and the way the world works. You have no idea how many people have written books like basically just going, no, this isn't true, bro. Like, trust me, man. Here in my home country, we have this totally separate way of thinking. You're making a horrible mistake. Please stop. And Americans will be like, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. This is old. Like, I can bring multiple citations from Iranian intellectuals in the 50s trying to point this out to the US. And they were all ignored. Not to say that this is some distinctly American thing, but it definitely does seem to be well entrenched in the US.
Very self-centered.
Not to critic, obviously not to, as I said, like I think this is somewhat universal, but so not to criticize Americans. It's just distinctly irksome about American, whereas people writing works of philosophy in other countries, do have to be aware that they cannot take certain premises for granted. Sometimes often they will though. Sometimes, like, French philosophers aren't great at this either, which is just really mind-boggling because how many people share the French cultural values, right? Outside of France, not many. And then some people will go the other way, and they'll simply assume that if you're not part of their culture, you can't share your values at all, which is absurd. But I get that, like, this sort of we have a tendency to take ourselves too seriously, and I'm not, like, often I think other blindness is just a form of self-blindness. Like, it was a definite shift. So on this channel, to use myself as an example, so it doesn't look like I'm just poking at other people, I always talk extensively about how good reasoning is fundamentally rooted in honor or constancy, right? You don't have one argument standard or for one sort of worldview, and then if somebody gives you another worldview that has the same evidence or the same arguments behind it, you have a totally different standard. Right? I am militantly opposed to the claim extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That is just sheer nonsense, because it's completely subjective what counts as extraordinary. But there was a definite and massive shift in my thinking once I realized that most people are not used to thinking about the fact that they're presenting sustained arguments, right? And that those arguments have structures. Like, I always talk about an argument it's a structure-bearing evidence. If I had to define it in brief, right? If I say I'm giving my money to charity because Jesus said to give money to charity and he's the Messiah, that is an argument and it's grounded in evidence, right? The argument is I should give my money to charity, and presumably you should too. And the conclusion and the evidence is because Jesus is the Messiah and he said to, right?
Yeah.
And then and you can extend this and have like I am going to take time to meditate for 5 minutes because mindfulness scientists say that'll be super effective. Right? Argument, evidence. it did not click to me for a couple years that most people are not interested in analyzing arguments and evidence. They're interested in finding arguments that match their worldview,
Yeah.
basically, and just using them. And that it's not clicking to them when I tell them that, for instance, they cannot say I have to trust one miracle claim but treat another one like it's demonic. Like, you can't do that. Because they're just taking one argument that supports their view and another argument that supports their view, and it's not clicking that it's the same argument.
And sometimes they have entirely contradictory arguments, right? Where it's like, oh, these people have like some big conspiracy out to get us, and they're so smart that they kept it from other people. And then they're also like, also these people are so stupid. They would wreck anything they're in charge of. We can't let them be in charge.
Yes.
It's like, oh yes, our utterly brilliant but also insanely stupid shadowy lords.
To be fair, there are people like that. Right. I would be a terrible government politician for that reason. Right. I'm not a good economist. But that being said, yeah, like you see that all the or people who will aggressively shift between is and ought, and they'll simply treat whatever they're talking about with the salient, like either the is, which is me, it is the case. Is descriptive, right? If I say it is the case that dropping a bookshelf down 30 stories onto a crowded sidewalk is a horrible life decision, that's a descriptive argument, right? That because with the justification being because you will kill several individuals and promptly be arrested. If I then say you shouldn't do so, because that would be horribly immoral to just violently crush people with a bookshelf for no reason, that's a prescriptive claim, right? Should claims operate separately from, or I won't say they operate separately from reality, because presumably you would want them to be related to reality in some sense. Like your oughts shouldn't be totally divorced from what people are doing or need, or but should claims are not descriptive in the way that is claims are, and people they'll switch between the two. Right, they'll tell you, well, everyone behaves in according to rational self-interest, and I'm like, no, they don't, and provide 50 different examples, and they'll be like, well, that's because they don't know what their rational self-interest is. It's like it's a different claim, buddy. Before you were saying they do behave, now you're saying they should behave according to their rational self-interest. All of a sudden, that's a very different field of argument with very different, and they will just not. They'll switch between the two depending on what's rhetorically useful. But yeah, I did not realize that other people weren't thinking that way. And yes, this was a lack of awareness about other people. This was also a lack of awareness about myself and about the way I think. Right.
Yeah, because the assumption is that I think normal. Therefore, other people also think normal.
Yeah.
So, and in that sense, like you're the worst source for your understanding yourself because you don't understand others.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the two are related.
Because you have no external gaze, you have no a bad internal perspective.
Yeah. And then, contrary-wise, awareness of this also made me more aware when I'd like them to be true. Which is a perennial human failing, right? It's just some of us are more aware of it than others. And some of us are better at countering it than others. But yeah. Not to say I'm the best there. But.
Yeah, sometimes it's a life experience thing where it's like you start one way, then finally you realize how utterly different everyone else is from you, and you're like, huh. Mm-hmm. Like, I think I'm a better source about myself now than I used to be. But knowing how bad I used to be makes me suspicious of my own self-perception. So is Uruka a lesbian? I think that that we have no idea.
Yeah, we have no idea. We have no idea. We will leave mysteries.
I
to her.
think we should respect people's what people tell us about themselves most of the time, unless it's just like super obvious. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, you always want to be wary with VTubers because they're all consummate actors, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or at least, sorry, the good ones are.
yeah.
And this isn't a mean or mean-spirited remark. It's what makes them good entertainers, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I think the very gay undercurrent of VTubing is a topic for a different stream.
Yes, yeah, certainly another time. Have you ever watched Fuamoko?
No, I'm aware who they are though.
Yeah, they may be. They may very well be two of the best actors alive.
Mm.
Like the sheer brilliance it takes to pretend, like to talk that way, for hours and hours at a time. They are just geniuses. I have always admired. Like I know people think they're adorable, and they are, but they are some of the best actors alive.
Mm-hmm.
They are just brilliant.
All right.
So we're gonna watch one more clip. We couldn't really play this song because it's a song. Mind you, I know that I would be upset if Yagu copy struck the stream or whatever, because he can take the money. Yagu's Bay. But yeah, I just did find it funny that they composed an entire song about a deep esoteric, like hermetic axiom. But yeah, we will end this stream with Shrek. Actually, this is also a clip about self-knowledge.
Reminder that this is the same woman who said she can't watch her older streams due to finding them cringe. This is not cringe. I don't like the old me. I'm a changed woman now. We don't talk about the old me, but I guess, there has to be an old you for change to exist. I don't like the old me. She was a little too rough around the edges. She lacked confidence. She lacked charisma. She lacked happiness. Wait. No, that hasn't changed. She lacked. I know what she lacked. The old me.
Oh, sorry, it's freezing.
The old me was so lacking. There's a reminder of dark times and how much of a loser I was, and how much of an imposter I felt like. Why did it take me so long to find myself? It's kind of crazy how much changes in a little over a year. It's all over now. It is all over now. I know what I've been lacking. My old streams didn't have pizzazz. I'm not proud of them. I was still finding myself clearly. Dealing with things like imposter syndrome. Just out of my element. I realized what I've been missing this whole time. It was green all along. And I'm not talking about the mod. I'm talking about ogre love. That's right. To achieve nirvana and real happiness, you have to become green. It was green all along.
We still love Kanye, and I love you like Kanye loves Kanye.
Yeah.
No way. How can you tell?
Sorry. I don't know. This moves around
Reminder
on
that
me
this
there. Alrighty. I figured that clip.
Yeah.
This was my Han Ultra Han clip, sort of. I think.
All right.
There's a lot. Yeah, This was a fascinating clip because let's talk about the structure of Ember's argument here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When you talked earlier, I mentioned arguments are structures with evidence, basically. And there will probably be Sorry, I was about to go off on a tangent, but I'll get back on target and not whiz all over the place. What is the argument Ember's making here? All right, so she starts off. This is a brilliant argument. I loved this argument because she starts off saying, she hadn't found herself. She's suffering from imposter syndrome, and it caused her to experience what was the exact wording? She lacked confidence. Charisma. Yeah, she lacked confidence, she lacked charisma, she lacked pizzazz, she lacked happiness. And what was the way, but this was all connected to imposter. And so what was the way to surmount her imposter syndrome? Attain Ogre Max. Yeah, Shrek Maxing. Precisely. And I thought this was a fascinating argument because it almost, usually when people talk about finding themselves, they talk about forms of behavior that are, how would we put this?
Societally acceptable?
Well, A, societally acceptable, yes. But often B, socially destructive. Or personally destructive, and often evincing contempt for other people.
Alright.
It's like, I dedicated my life to helping my family and blah, 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 and working, and now I'm off to find myself. And then they leave their family and quit their job and become a traveling circus clown, earning $5 a week in putting on performances on the New Orleans dockyards for dock workers. Right. Or they say, I'm off to find myself, and then they blow all their money on, what's a really, Bugatti. They buy a Bugatti. They go, where's your Bugatti? Authenticity culture is intensely interwoven with brash and rude and contemptible actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is subject for another stream. Actually, everyone always talks about performative righteousness, right? It's people who pretend to be good. Nobody ever talks about people for performative sinners.
All those, there are a bunch of streamers who are basically just that, right?
Yeah.
I think there was some kid recently, I forget his name, who got in a wreck because he was streaming himself speeding in the rain, and then videotaped him being an asshole to the emergency people afterwards. It's this is all performative, but this is performative evil.
Basically, yeah. And sometimes it's often, that one's a more extreme example. You meet a lot of people, though, who are actually, they're totally normal and often very sweet individuals. They just feel some obligation to be really rude to you.
Yeah.
And just because they think that makes them more authentic.
Yeah, there's there's also kind of that facts don't care about your feelings thing. I'm just gonna tell the truth. I'm gonna be a truth teller. I'm not gonna bow to the woke snowflakes.
Yeah. And then you get the exact opposite side where they're like, I'm not going to tone police.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm not going to people who think they have to be gross because they think that being polite and courteous and respectful is a Puritan form of self-righteous hypocrisy or whatever.
Mm.
You can come at this from any perspective, really. transcends political and religious boundaries. And yet Ember, when she talks about finding herself and becoming the new her, she's not talking about being, more rude. She's talking about being, yes, more confident, but of course, confidence is not the same as brashness. And yes, she talks about, charisma. Somebody's busy. All right, sorry. Back on target. What to say? Oh yeah, and she talks about becoming Shrek. Right. It's all, finding herself as an ogre is what helped her find yourself as a person and become the new, confident, happy nirvana. Attainment of nirvana is the sort of Buddhist equivalent of theosis, right? The attainment of I want to say perfection, spiritual glorification, which was all obviously intentional because obviously Ember is well aware of the subtleties of comparative religion.
How could she not be?
How could she not be? Precisely. Clearly, everyone has my knowledge base. Right. So yeah, and that to me was absolutely fascinating because we talk about a lot of philosophy. You talk about the self, right? What does it mean to find yourself? What does it mean to be yourself? How do we as selves interact in communities? How does the self interact with the sort of salvation, if you believe in that? Is there a relationship between the self and family, or between the self and society, or are such things mutually exclusive? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And typically we do not consider the self to be, I actually, not actually true that nobody has argued that becoming yourself is becoming Shrek. Ember is not the first person to seriously contend this in a philosophical argument. Probably just the most successful. How many people watch this clip? Yeah, that's probably somebody once told me what a stream name is. Sorry about that. All right, so, and that to me was fascinating because especially we talk about Byung-Chul Han a lot on this channel. We talk about, I occasionally reference other critical theorists, and I'm usually critical of them. A critical theorist. What'd you do? Critically, no, I'm sorry. Critical about critical theorists, especially about their insistence on rejecting the self. Right. It is an axiomatic presupposition of the philosophers who operate in that school. Probably the one premise they insist on most heavily, that the self does not exist.
Yep.
For different reasons, like they'll all come at it from different angles. Maurice Merleau-Ponty had one argument, Theodore Adorno had another, Jean-Luc Nancy had a third, Graham Harman, who I mentioned earlier, had a fourth. Many different philosophies. It's just one of the big shared premises is that criticality of the self and of the sort of the features that would be part of ourselves, like our humanity, our gender, our culture, if we're part of our family, stuff like that. A lot of critical theory is monumentally obsessed with metaphysical deconstructions, to use its own terminology, or current terminology, of these concepts to show that there is no self that participate, and it doesn't participate in any of these because the thing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I am very, very, as I said, critical of this, and so this clip struck out to me immediately because obviously Ember, who's very well educated, not just in comparative religion but also in continental philosophy, is articulating a clever critique of this type of reasoning. That, you know, when you're out to find yourself, it's not that you're either becoming nothing or are becoming, you know, your whatever rude ball of authenticity you subscribe to. It is that you are becoming Shrek. You're ogre maxing.
Yes.
You're just ogre maxing into nirvana. And that to me was a brilliant argument. 100% certified true.
Yes.
Obviously.
Gotta go to Swamp Fauna.
Gotta go to Swamp Fauna. No, but it's I've never talked about him on stream, but have you and I ever spoken about William? So you know, Shrek was written. Actually,
you've personally to me, you have mentioned multiple times about Shrek and
being
about, yes, the author, like what the name means, etc.
Yeah. So Shrek, for those who don't know, before it was, let me find an image where Shrek is visible. This is clearly not that image. Okay. I thought there was part of the clip where she stepped back for a moment.
I know she moved to like this side, or maybe that was like a different VTuber. I don't.
Yeah. All right. So, but I'm talking about Ogre. Yeah. So before Shrek was this lovely animated character, Shrek was a children's book novel written by William Steig. I think it's his best known writing. He also wrote. William Steig wrote a lot. Rotten Island is a great one. There's one that I always give out as gifts to people because it's such a perfect kids book. But yeah, Rotten Island, absolute classic. One of the best stories for young boys ever written. Sorry, I just had to ban someone. I'd been hoping he'd leave if I ignored him for 10 minutes, but evidently he had nothing better to do than post individual letters in this channel.
Talk about the issues with false authenticity.
Yeah. Sorry, but yeah, he wrote Shrek, wrote Solomon the Rusty Nail, wrote Rotten Island, which is the #1 book for young boys everywhere. I can think of almost nobody who understood young boys as well as that man. Alpha Beta Chowder, Whizzle, with which I think is in illustrations by Quentin Blake. Oh, The Real Thief. The Real Thief. I recommend that one to ever. It is the best book to read to your. They can't read it till they're 4 or 5 because it's about 30 pages of text, which is a little long for most kids. But when they hit 4 or 5, it's a small book. I know I said 30 pages, but it's compact, a little smaller than novel size. It is the kids. They always have trouble. Like, people will do something wrong to them and they will basically end their relationship with that person. Right, forever.
Yeah.
They will never talk to them again. They'll often go to the same school for the next 8 years without exchanging a single word. Children are the least forgiving individuals you can ever meet, and so that book it's one of the only books I've ever seen seriously tackle that theme for children in an entertaining narrative. So,
All right.
yeah, sorry, that was a big digression, but that's Wild Philosopher's obligatory I love William Steig, he's the best speech.
So tell us about Shrek.
Yes, Shrek comes from a Yiddish word for fear. So that Yiddish word, it is the Yiddish word for fear. His name is Fear the Ogre. I know it's kind of funny actually. It's probably, there have been 4 or 5 Jewish fantasies which have really made it in America. The Princess Bride is going to be another one. Phantom Tollbooth, Where the Wild Things Are, Labyrinth. Those are all other good examples. But Shrek, and the original plot of Shrek is this hideous, blood-curdlingly ugly, disgusting monster leaves a swamp, and he wanders about, scaring the living bejesus out of all and sundry, until eventually he finds a hideous female ogre being imprisoned by a dragon, to which he does the rational thing and violently beats the dragon up. I can't remember if he just breathes on it and it collapses because of his bad breath, or if he actually assaults it. At any rate, he wins. He meets the hideously ugly ogress, and they get married.
Yes, famous lines. No priest would officiate because God hated Shrek for being alive, so they used a crocodile.
Did they? I can't remember that one.
Yes.
They may have done that. Steig had very interesting religious views. He was heavily into the orgone theories of Wilhelm Reich, which I will not get into because that is wildly off target, but it is a bizarre truism of reality that the only people who write good children's fictions are people who are into some of the weirdest religious and philosophical ideas conceivable. It's like the guy who wrote The Never-Ending Story was into anthroposophy, a German secret society that thought they could open new states of minds through dance and organic farming. The woman who wrote The Secret Garden, that whole novel's about faith healing with the Holy Spirit. She was into Christian Science. And then Pinocchio's an allegory for Italian nationalism. Nobody normal is allowed to write good kids books. Got C.S. Lewis, you got Tolkien. I'm trying to, Dr. Seuss was into some really weird stuff too. You are just not allowed to write good kids books if you have a normal personality and no especial philosophy on life.
Yeah.
You have to have some really weird preoccupation.
You gotta have some really, really spicy hot takes on reality.
Yeah, basically. Even The Wrinkle in Time was written by a hardline universalist, which I know you believe, but is certainly not a normal soteriology. I'm trying to think of some other good kids books off the top of my head. They all have very weird. Eva Ibbotson just took it for granted that school should be abolished, and wrote children's books to prove this point.
Did you hit Lewis Carroll yet? I forget.
I did not, but Lewis Carroll's another good one. Right. He was a very, very staunch member of the Anglo-Tractarians, a semi-Catholic sect of the Anglican Church, worried over whether card games were immoral, and wrote much of his literature to satirize contemporary attitudes to logic.
Yes.
He was a professor. He was a professor of logic. There's actually a book of his, Symbolic Logic, that I recommend like any Lewis Carroll head reads, because you'll read that book and then go read Alice in Wonderland. It's like, holy crap. Every single line in this book is totally logical and completely absurd. Yeah, like Lewis Carroll. Robert Louis Stevenson, a guy who wrote Treasure Island and Jekyll and Hyde, again was famously backpacked across most of Europe with only a donkey, then decided he was done with Europe entirely and sailed to American Samoa. I think he went to American Samoa. And he was like, screw you, Europe, I'm going to die here. And you can see his perspective trickling through a lot of his literature. Fascinating. Andrew Lang, who nobody knows him, but everyone's familiar with his work because he codified all of the fairy tales as we know them today.
Mm-hmm.
Not on purpose. He was just like, I'm going to publish fairy tale books for kids. And they just ended up being the definitive versions, basically, for our culture. And he was a member of the Society for Parapsychological Research. It's just, it's not that he was a staunch believer, but if you read his own, the one fairy tale he wrote, Prince Prigio, which is probably the best literary fairy tale ever composed, and I might actually do a reading on this channel. It would be a good use of my time. You will notice certain how do I put this? Philosophical opinions he has that are very out of the norm. But yeah, as I said, nobody's really allowed to do kids' books unless they're really weird.
All right, so back to
Shrek. Yes, that was my transition. Yes, Shrek. The whole story of Shrek is in fact about love, and it's interesting. If you read the original book and then go and watch the movie, you'll see like these are almost two totally different stories, like plot-wise. And yet William Steig, who died a couple years after the first movie came out, loved it. He absolutely adored the film because he felt it perfectly captured the theme he was going for, which is that love is not about beauty, or at least that the beauty love strives for can often manifest as extreme hideousness without.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shrek is mind-bogglingly ugly, and yet he's able to find love.
Yeah.
Right. And in a sense, Shrek, it's not that everyone deserves love, it's that Shrek, like through his character, even though he looks hideous and he is a hideous ogre, his character is still such that he was able to fall into love.
Yeah.
He was able to trust, as Doki Bird reminded us of earlier this stream. And so, yeah, like at first, I mean, you might think I was joking when I said that I felt Ember had a definite point here when she talked about ogre maxing as the key to finding yourself and becoming a happier person, right? Because it's obviously like I didn't watch the full stream, so I don't know where she went with this. Is the opening clip. I don't know where she went with this or what her goal was, but I do think she ultimately did have a point that, yeah, if you look at the original ethos of Shrek, and then you look at, say, ourselves, and you want to ask yourself that question, do I really... if you're down in the dumps, if you lack charisma and self-confidence because you think you're, hideous, and maybe not just hideous without, right? If you think you're hideous within, maybe you have a point. But does that mean you will never find love? No. You can always ogre max your way into happiness. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
that was
I think that's a good thought to end on. Is yes, be more like Shrek.
Be more like Shrek. Be more like Shrek. Yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, folks. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and always remember that fairies are real. Yeah. Alrighty. Have a great night.